In your video where you debunk white privilege, you talk about how white privilege is a made-up term by privileged minorities. So I was wondering if you can elaborate on some of the privileges that you think minority groups have.
Okay, so in privileges in the law, so when I say privilege, I'm actually going to talk about legal standing. Okay, so affirmative action is a privilege. Affirmative action is a privilege. Subprime mortgages designed to appeal to minority recipients without proper qualifications, that is a privilege. And those are a couple examples of privilege. Privilege would also be the police being told that they can't police in communities the same way they would in other communities because they don't understand the problems of minority communities. That's a privilege. And by the way, these privileges are not helpful, but these are, as an overall matter, but it is certainly it's very difficult for me to see how it's not a privilege to get a lower score on the SAT than the Asian guy who's living in exactly the same circumstance. He gets penalized 50 points, you get 230 points on the SATs. That is definitionally a privilege. So there's one. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so I'm just going to let.
A political column in Rolling Stone magazine is suggesting America's millennial generation should push for, quote, a fair society. And this is a quote, as much as unemployment blows, so do jobs. What if people didn't have to work to survive? Is this a joke?
No, I mean, it isn't. This is actually how a lot of millennials think, and this is how the Occupy Wall Street movement thinks. This is a group of people who graduated with degrees in lesbian dance theory and then were surprised when they didn't get a six-figure paycheck out of college.
So in the very rare case where a leftist uses evidence, logic, and empiricism, how do I combat, statistics they propose?
Who is it and when has it happened ever?
I agree with you that biologically a man is a man and a woman is a woman. I was just wondering what you see the detriment of society, why we can't let a transgender woman be called she or something.
Because it is a lie.
The fact is that workers everywhere in the nation need a higher minimum wage, and workers everywhere are inspired by what's happened so far in Seattle, and all eyes are on Seattle. Workers everywhere are feeling empowered by how much workers in Seattle are fighting for their rights. So it has nothing to do with Seattle zip code. We need this to happen everywhere, but what's wrong with starting with Seattle?
It's true. You might say that workers of the world, for lack of a better word, are uniting. As far as the.
It's easy to make facetious comments. It's very hard to dispute data.
Well, since you provided no data in that actual answer, it's not that difficult.
Today we're going to go through a lot of the terms that these folks use. And these are terms that I'm sure you have heard because you're on campus, and for people who are watching online, you may have not have heard these because you exist in the real world where mommy and daddy don't pay the bills, and you're not paid to believe in the power of your dreams, and no one cares about your feelings. So, here are the terms that we're going to go through and talk about today. We're going to talk about diversity, we're going to talk about white privilege, we're going to talk about trigger warnings, we're going to talk about microaggressions, and we're going to talk about safe spaces. So the Hall of Fame of stupidity. Now, this exercise may in fact trigger some people, so consider this your trigger warning. I don't care how you feel. And if your feelings are hurt, I'm not sorry in any way. No. The reason I say no, I'd be happy to let people in if they're not screaming, the reason I say no is because it's a fire hazard, and the last time people tried to create a fire hazard, they pulled the fire alarm in the middle of the lecture.
Don't give them ideas.
And I know, they don't have many of their own.
How do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Millennials are more likely to be lean Democrat, or now socialism is on the rise. How do we convey conservatism to them and show them the light?
What people on the left tend to hear from people on the left about politics is socialism is moral. It's the right thing to do. You're rich, that guy's poor. Wouldn't it be more moral if you were both not quite as polarized on the spectrum? If you have $10, does it really hurt you to give up $2 to that guy who has $3? Aren't you both better off now? And the answer is, just because I exist doesn't mean I get to steal your money. We have to determine how that money got in your pocket in the first place. There's something deeply immoral to suggesting that I am owed something by you simply because I'm here and we're in the same room. Okay, that's not true. I don't know how you got your money. Maybe you worked your way up from poverty. Maybe you made a lot of money because you invented some new GMO that allowed billions of people to be fed. Right? In that case, you deserve the money. And guess what? You deserve the money in a free market economy because people were willing to engage in a voluntary transaction with you. Voluntary transactions, consent. This is the nature of capitalism. Seizure of property, seizure of wealth, force, compulsion. These are the nature of socialism.
White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Fast food workers themselves courageously took their lives into their own hands, walked out of their jobs in a one-day strike in New York City, and demanded $15 an hour. And that is the first step, because the economy is not going to remain static. We have to fight for affordable housing. We have to fight for better services in terms of mass transit, education, healthcare. And that is why we have to also talk about taxing the super wealthy and big corporations.
Okay.
Well, I mean, of course one government policy leads to the next. If you raise the minimum wage, then it's going to raise the rents. When it raises the rents, you're going to have to build affordable housing. When you have to build affordable housing, you have to tax people to build the affordable housing. When you tax people to build the affordable housing, people move out of the city, and you have to raise taxes on the people who remain in the city, and this is how you hollow out the economy of a major metropolitan area in the United States.
I debate socialists all the time, and their only real comeback is, oh, that's not real socialism, or that's not real communism. Is there any way to really get around that and try to make them see that, look, just because your version of socialism, that magical fantasy land version of socialism, has not been tried, doesn't mean that socialism is an acceptable concept.
Yes. So the problem is that you're arguing with them in terms of the effectiveness of socialism. So what that argument is, you say socialism doesn't work, it fails everywhere, it makes people poor and miserable, right? That's the argument. And then they go, but that's because it hasn't been properly tried, right? That's their comeback. So here is the actual argument that works with socialism. It is immoral to steal from people even if you vote to steal from people. Okay, if there are 3 people in a room, and it's me, and I have $100, and you and your friend are in the room, and you vote to beat me up and take my money, that does not make it morally legitimate for you to beat me up and take my money. One of the great lies that's been told about socialism, and you see this all the time, is people say socialism, beautiful idea in theory, but it doesn't work in practice. No, socialism is a shitty idea in theory, and it's an immoral idea in practice.
So the wage gap between men and women, what would your opinion on this?
I mean, it's not my opinion, it's statistical fact. This is bullshit. Okay, the 78 cents on the dollar myth is just that. It's a myth. Time magazine actually found as early as 2010 that in the 50 biggest cities in the United States, women were actually earning more than men. If they had the same job qualifications, the same number of years in the workforce, the same number of hours worked, the reason that women on average are paid less is because women take time off, they take less risky jobs, they don't take as much time at work, they would rather be home with their families. These are choices that women make, and it's astonishing to me that feminists actually degrade those choices as though it's a terrible thing when a woman takes time off. Well, it's her choice. I mean, I thought that was your whole deal.
I think that if you are looking at your own lives, what you would like for your own families, for all your loved ones, what is it that you look for? You look for a decent standard of living. You look for good schools for your children, decent, good quality food, nutritious food, a safe neighborhood, decent housing to live in. You're looking for all these things. So are all those 100,000 workers who need something close to a living wage. And I really agree, you know, $15 an hour is not enough. but it is really disingenuous to say that it's not enough and then not fight for something like 15 or even more.
Ben? People want a lot of things, you know, housing, health, you know, to live forever, a pony. I mean, there are a lot of things that we all want out of life. The reality is that there is no pony tree, which makes it difficult. So when it comes to the morality of this, bottom line to me is it is not vicious, cruel, or immoral for me to make you an offer that you consensually accept. In fact, it is vicious, cruel, and immoral for someone who's a third party to get involved, or for you to leverage a gun to get in the middle of that consensual relationship.
Time.
You know, my perspective on transgenderism is very clear, and I've been very clear about it for a very long time. I believe in this thing called biology. I believe in this thing called chromosomal biology. I don't believe there's a magic machine that makes men into women or women into men. I think that if you have the biology of a man, you are indeed a man, and what you think in your head does not make it so. If you think you're Napoleon Bonaparte, you're not, and if you think that you're a woman when you're a man, you are still a man who thinks he's a woman. And I think it is actually cruelty. I think it's cruelty to people who suffer from gender dysphoria to suggest that the mental illness that is gender dysphoria can be cured by cutting up your body. That is not the problem. And the proof that it's not the problem is that after people cut up their bodies, their suicide rate is precisely the same as it was before they had the surgery. So passing this off as, oh, the only reason the suicide rate is 40% is because people are mean to transgenders, that's a bunch of crap. The reason that the suicide rate is 40% is because there is a high comorbidity between depression and suicidality and gender dysphoria.
I feel the frustration of what's happening in the community, and I think it's a symptom. The uprisings are a symptom of a pressure that's been unaddressed for too long.
I'm offended by the language of uprising applied to people who are breaking into other black people's stores and looting them. This is a lack of values. And people who are destroying private property, destroying cop cars, in an uprising against what exactly? Against the black police chief, against a mostly minority police force, against the black mayor, against the black president, against the black attorney general, against against a city council that is 9 of 15 are black and all 15 are elected Democrats. What is the uprising against? What is it seeking to achieve? The idea that we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage with a certain level of justification, in other words, the more outraged you are and the more angry you are, the more justified you must be, is absolute nonsense. All of this, the white privilege, the microaggressions, this provides the impetus for the safe space, the vaunted safe space, which I know I have violated multiple times tonight. And I gotta tell you, I don't give two hoots in hell. The system is so corrupt, it's so inescapable, and you've made it so corrupt and so inescapable to yourself that you need a safe space. Everybody needs to be put outside the safe space, and reality must not intrude. There are only one group of people that want safe spaces so that they never have to hear from anybody of a different ideology or political persuasion. Those people are called fascists. Okay, and you've got a bunch of fascists, damn fascists on this campus, who are trying to shut down political debate and trying to cloister themselves in this little cocoon of stupidity so they don't have to debate anyone or think about issues outside their kin so that they can feel comfortable. Guess what? Life isn't about feeling comfortable. Life is about bettering yourself. Get off your ass, you stupid pansies.